All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today's Lunch and Learn. The topic for today is best practices for managing negative online content and sponsored by our friends at Consumer Fusion. If you have any questions for the team today, go ahead and throw them in the chat box and they'll answer them at the end. And a reminder that this is being recorded and will be put on the community site for further viewing later. So for now, I'm going to kick it over to Mark Spencer, who's going to introduce Consumer Fusion and the rest of the team. Mark?
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. My name is Mark Spencer. I'm the Chief Operating Officer. You can see my phone number there. It is pager friendly, so feel free to page me anytime. I want to jump right into who we're going to be talking to today. Myself, Mark Spencer, Chief Operating Officer. We have Bren Gibbs, who's the CEO of Consumer Fusion, and we have Sally Fasanelli, who has been in the franchising industry for 85 years. As you can see, the moisturizer is working really well, so please let us know how that works. But
Hi, guys.
As she mentioned, Caitlin mentioned, we want to hold all the questions to the end. Make sure you put it in the chat, and then Sally at the end is going to read out those questions, and we're going to address those questions at the end. So we're going to run through these slides pretty quick so that way we can bring more value to the audience towards the end, so that way everybody can learn off those questions. So real quick, the overview, and it's a very hot topic in today's world, especially with our environment, employee poll, the Karens of the world. We are going to teach you how to dispute negative reviews. We're also going to educate you on how to respond to those negative reviews that might have come in or you're being hit with. From there, we've got to think of out-of-the-box tips to help you succeed with the negativity that is being portrayed about you or your business online, and then those negative review and those impacts of those negative reviews. So we're going to dive right into how to dispute negative reviews. I want to give you some information, and this is a very good feedback, that most difficult reputation management tasks are being identified by removing those negative reviews, as about 58% of businesses having received fake reviews. We get a lot of feedback with brand managers, VP of marketing, that it's just a daunting task to have the team continue to try to deflag it, dispute it, go back, see if it's been removed. So that's what Consumer Fusion is. We are an all-in-one reputation management, providing solutions of how to remove negative reviews. And we've removed over 60,000 negative reviews across every single review site, such as Google, Yelp, Facebook, and including Glassdoor and Indeed. So without further ado, Bren Gibbs, our CEO, is going to dive into how to remove negative reviews and photos. Bren, take it away.
Thanks, Mark. Hi there, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. So one thing I want to touch on is it's not just fake reviews that you want to try to dispute for possible removal. It is inappropriate and illegitimate content as well. So that could be both reviews and photos. So the 4 steps to disputing content for possible removal: you have identifying illegitimate content, the flagging and dispute process, following up on those open disputes, and then lastly is responding to reviews in a prompt manner. So the first step is identifying illegitimate reviews. So every directory site and social site has their own guidelines and terms of conditions. For the most part, they overlap and they're very similar, but they do differ in some ways. So before you go in to open up a dispute, familiarize yourself with that particular directory or social site's guidelines. They're going to be at the footer of their site, linked out, or you could do a simple Google search, Yelp's terms of service, and they'll be bullet pointed for you for quick reference. But here below, we have 4 bullet points for the main reasons we're successful in getting negative content, inappropriate content removed for brands. And that's going to be spam or promotional material. So spam is if a user copies and pastes the same review and posts it to multiple locations. Promotional material is when they're using a review to promote another competing local business. Personal rant from a former employee. This has been huge the last year and a half. The issue with this, though, the actual content of the review has to make it clear that the reviewer either is a current employee or a former employee, and that's grounds for immediate removal on most sites, other than Glassdoor and Indeed, of course. Not a direct firsthand experience. We run into this all the time. This is when someone is reviewing about a family member, a friend, a neighbor's experience, not their own firsthand direct experience. And the sites are big on this because they want accurate, factual reviews. So if it was not the actual reviewer who had that direct consumer experience, you can successfully get that content removed. And then reviews being posted to the wrong location. This happens all the time in franchising. People don't realize that they're accidentally posting to the wrong listing, or they'll just do a generic Google search for that brand and review the first directory site that pops up. And with this approach, the actual content of the review has to state that they worked with a business at a different location than what listing it's actually posted to. So those are the main, most common reasons when we're successful in getting inappropriate content removed, but the list is endless in regards to how content can violate those guidelines. So on the screen now, we have 3 examples of Google reviews that we've successfully removed for clients. The first one from Alejandro Perez, he is reviewing about his neighbor's experience. And then in addition to that, it's a rant about that particular business's COVID operations. Michelle Marie, she was an employee, unprofessional place to work for. Karen is very rude. And then the last one, Toyota Bucket, learn how to drive. That was someone with road rage, not a consumer experience. Here we have Glassdoor and Indeed examples of content that we've been successful in removing. So these 2 sites are different because these are intended for employees. So someone having been a current or former employee is not grounds for removal here, but these sites still do have their own guidelines in terms of service. The one on the right, Working in Hell, just that initial reference to hell was gave us the ability to successfully remove that content for a brand. So again, just familiarizing yourself with the content. Now, when it comes to opening up a dispute for review removal, the first step is to flag the reviews. The majority of the time, that's not going to get you anywhere. You're going to have to dig deeper and actually open up disputes and tickets to get support from those said sites to assist you. So what we have up on the screen now is Google support. Sally is going to copy and paste this link into the chat. So you have to have access to the GMB page for the review that you want to dispute. The first step is to go in and flag the review first. Google then requires that you wait 3 days. And if that review is still intact, you can go in and open up a dispute. Currently, because their support is in India and they are so backlogged, it's 7 days, not 3, but we're hopeful that they will go back to the 3-day timeframe soon. But all you'll do here is type in where it says, tell us what you need help with. You'll put review removal, and then a few additional fields will pop in. You'll plug in the link to the GMB page, the content of the review, and you'll have the ability to type in why you feel the actual content of the review or the account itself is violating their guidelines. Depending on how backlogged Google is, you'll have the option to receive a phone call, chat, or email. Most of the time, when it comes to review removal, they're just going to give you the option to email, but you will get a response from Google support within 24 hours. One thing I want to point out here, though, this is not the specialist team that has the power to remove the reviews. This is the gatekeeper, the moderator. So you are just trying to convince this individual that the review violates guidelines. If they agree, they will escalate the review to the specialist team for review for possible removal. So it's a 2-step process here. So this is Google. Next, we're going to go into Yelp. So with Yelp, you can flag reviews. A lot of times you'll get an automated response that says this review's already been flagged by another user, it's been evaluated, and we've elected to keep this review intact. Super frustrating because you get that response immediately and it's automated. So with Yelp, there is another method to disputing content that you feel violates their guidelines. There's another link at the bottom. Sally's going to copy and paste that into the chat as well. But this is where you go to request a second evaluation of a review. When you get that automated email response from Yelp, there's going to be a case number in the subject. You're just going to copy and paste that in the field where it says case number. And then the good news is that in the comments box, you can actually type in why the content of the review or the account activity violates Yelp's guidelines. The thing is, Yelp is fantastic when it comes to updating you on the flagging of a review, but with the second evaluation, they sometimes do not respond. So you'll want to keep an eye on it. And if you don't hear back within about a week, do this again. So that's how you can request a second evaluation on Yelp. Now, a little bit of advice here when it comes to disputing the reviews. A lot of times people get emotional with it and they start arguing with the moderators as to what that customer did wrong, or that customer's lying or exaggerating. They don't want to hear it. They only look at the content of the review and the account activity. So instead of going into, 5-paragraph details of what transpired, copy and paste the 2 sentences of the review that violate those guidelines in terms of service, explain why they violate, and leave it at that. It'll just result in a quicker turnaround for you, and you'll have more success than if you type out too long of a story. So the next thing is following up on those disputes. So like I mentioned with Yelp and requesting that second evaluation, they don't always notify you and update you after they have reviewed that request. So that's why you need to still go out and check your listings to see if that review was removed or not. Google sometimes will respond to their tickets, but they're huge. They're inundated. So sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. So just keep an eye on all your different sites and stay persistent with the disputes. When Google responds to you with their email, you can reply back, and they have a ticket number. So they will see like the last correspondence that they had with you. And it says here, Google, you can dispute the same review more than once. That is absolutely true. Our team is successful in removing negative reviews on the 8th, 9th, 10th dispute attempts for our clients. Look at it as each time you open up a new dispute, you're working with a new jury in a courtroom. You're working with a new moderator where you have the opportunity to argue why the content of the review violates. So just because you hear no once doesn't mean you should stop. Stay persistent, don't give up, keep finding different angles as to why the review violates. And also keep in mind that Google support is currently in India, and sometimes with the cultural changes, you could play that to our advantage. All right, I'm going to kick it back over to Mark to talk a little bit about responding to reviews as the business owner now.
Thank you, Brent. I appreciate that very informative information. And once again, please put any questions that you do have, or if you've ran across any issues with negative reviews that you've tried to dispute in the questions, and we'll address those at the end. Now, moving along with responding. So we always want to make sure we respond to the negative reviews, because 45% of consumers say that they're more likely to visit a business that responds to their negative reviews. So it just shows that the business owners are taking a very precautionary circumstances and also making sure they take care of the business, and you want to do it in a timely manner. Now, this is going right into what Yelp's data science team says, that reviewers are 33% more likely to upgrade their review if they respond with a personalized message within a day. So imagine if you went to a restaurant, you had a bad experience, you wrote a negative Yelp review, and then within 12 to 24 hours, you're already getting a response back from the restaurant trying to rectify the situation. You'll probably go back into the restaurant, A, probably get a discount, but B, update that review or remove it altogether. And if you look at it as a business owner standpoint, once again, now you've retained that client back into that restaurant, and they'll be coming more and more back towards that restaurant. So it's very, very important to make sure you respond in a very timely manner. Now, here's some big bullet points in regards to responding to your online reviews. The best business practices are, you want to respond, and we just talked about responding to the negative side of things. You want to respond to all of your reviews, both positive and negative, because if, with the negatives, yes, you're going to show a potential consumer that you care in that business owner's response. But on the positive side, these people have taken time out of their day to write a good review about your business. The most important thing is to thank them for that review. Respond within 24 to 48 hours of a new review. Time is of the essence. Imagine if you have a negative review and you respond 6 months later, it's not going to have that same effect if you respond within that 24 to 48 hours. Same thing with the positives. Now, here's a very, very good tip that we highly recommend that you do put into your responses, whether it's negative or positive, as including keywords and categories to boost your local SEO. And what I mean by that is, if it's a 5-star review saying, "Hey, Bobby, thank you so much for your 5-star review. We pride ourselves on being the best steakhouse in San Diego, California. Thank you so much for those kind words." Or if it's a negative experience, "Hey, Bobby, we're so sorry you had a negative experience here at ABC Steakhouse. We pride ourselves on being the best steakhouse in San Diego, California. Please reach out to," and in there have a phone number and email that they can reach out to. So with those keywords, you want to include those into your owner's responses, which therefore will help you rank organically in that local map section. To respond to a positive review, all it takes is a sentence or two to express your gratitude. Once again, these people are taking the time out of their day. It's almost like on social media when people wish you a happy birthday, you always want to acknowledge that they did that and thank them for that. So treat that the same as your business and those positive reviews as well. Now, responding to negative reviews requires a little more of a careful approach. Like Bryn mentioned, in regards to disputing the negatives, we don't want to get into the backstories and details of it. It's more of going straight to the point and being very methodical about those responses. And we'll dive into those a little bit later here in the slides. Now, here's some examples of what not to do. Once again, how they're going into the owner's response, going, we didn't do this, you didn't do that, this is a false review. Pointing fingers is not the thing to do, because over 90% of consumers read business owners' responses. And when it turns into, you have a negative and then you turn it into a double negative, it's going to turn that potential consumer off and probably go to your competitor. Now, here's a good example of what you should do to respond to that review. So someone wrote a negative review, and then at the bottom, they said, thank you for the feedback. I've tried privately messaging you, because on Yelp, you can privately message them and take it offline. And they're just trying to take a moment to try to rectify the situation. So if I'm a consumer and I see this negative review, I see that business owner's response, it's very to the point. It's not pointing fingers. And it's really trying to rectify the situation offline as well. Now, more best business practices for responding to the negative reviews. Express that you're empathetic without admitting fault is a good bullet point. Find a way to take your conversation offline by offering to reach out. Sometimes if it's on Google, you can't privately message them, but a lot of the times in the username, you might be able to identify who that customer or that client is, and maybe picking up the phone or reaching out to them if you have that contact information to try to take the review offline. Because a lot of times if you do rectify the situation, they might come back and utilize your services again. So it's very important to do that. Now with Yelp, you can privately respond to that Yelper offline, but once again, be very empathetic with that, because I've seen a lot of the times, sometimes that consumer takes a snapshot of that private response, and that business owner ranted and raved and pointed fingers, and they just aired out their dirty laundry again, and they reposted it with that image of that private message. So be very methodical and empathetic in regards to that response. And be aware that customers pay attention to the way businesses handle their responses. So another couple tips for negative reviews. Once again, if you can, reach out to the customer directly to try to resolve their issue. We find out more often than not, after we go through some of the brands that we work with and we reach down to the franchisees and try to find out what it is, and we've gone through the steps of trying to remove it and we've been unsuccessful, it's amazing when that franchisee or the Zora reaches out, rectifies the situation. A lot of the times that review gets updated or removed altogether. And that leads right into that second bullet point. Now, once again, Bryn mentioned review sites such as Glassdoor and Indeed are very hot right now. We understand in the franchise industry and a lot of businesses, they're really difficult trying to hire. So it's very important to hit your employee review sites head on with Glassdoor and Indeed and address those negative reviews, because once again, these employees are looking to make sure they're going to the right company that they want to work for. And in Glassdoor and Indeed are very hot right now in regards to that. Plus they rank extremely high in the Google search. And so they're going to look into you, and addressing those false negative contents can improve your star ranking immensely. It's also important to prioritize the reviews on your corporate location pages. We work not only on the consumer facing side, but a lot of the times the franchisee at the local level doesn't handle that circumstance like they should. And so what happens is that consumer goes to and types in the franchise's corporation, and now the corporate location is hit with negative reviews that weren't addressed at the local level. And so we work a lot of sides on the franchise development side, to where a lot of times that these franchises are trying to sell these franchises, and it's hard because they look into them as well. So once again, we see a lot of those reviews going not only at the local level, but going to the brand level as well. And a lot of the times, as Bryn mentioned, it's for a separate location. So they go to corporate and say, no, I had a bad issue in San Francisco, even though corporate's in Florida. That's where we can help out, or you can help and go through that dispute process like we mentioned earlier. So we want to wrap this up pretty quick because I know we're running out of time, but here's some key takeaways. Negative reviews that violate terms and conditions can be disputed and removed from review sites. Once again, Google, Yelp, Facebook, they don't have the manpower to police these reviews. So once again, Consumer Fusion is, the police of the Wild Wild West, and we hold those reviews to those terms and conditions. It is important to leave an owner's response on your negative reviews along with your positives. You always want to respond to each and every one of those reviews, and that's a huge area of opportunity to make sure a franchisee at the local level is being optimized with that local SEO and those key category words in those owners' responses. And negative reviews don't only affect a loss of business from new customers, but also affect new hires and new franchisees, franchise sales as well. And once again, if you have a negative review and you don't think it can hurt your business, well, once again, it's the unknown. It's scary because a consumer can come across that review, it's not responded to, and they might not pick up the phone and tell you they were going to go to you, but they go to your competitors. So it's very important to make sure that those owners' responses are in place and in a timely manner. Now, real quick before we open these the questions, I want to let you know, Consumer Fusion, we work with franchisors across multiple different brands. And so with that, a lot of these reviews are very difficult and daunting. Once again, I said that we have removed over 60,000 reviews, photos, questions across those directory sites. And if you are running into issues or you need help with owners' responses or automated owners' responses that Consumer Fusion does provide, we do provide a 2-month free pilot for a franchisor, and then also one franchisee location. So from here, feel free to reach out to that website and fill out that form, and we'll be glad to reach out to you and address any negativity that might be out there, along with helping out with owners' responses as well. So from there, it looks like we have some questions. So from this, Sally, go for it.
Yeah, we've got 3 questions so far. So we'll start with the top one. What other review sites other than Google can you dispute the same review more than once?
Bren, do you want to take that?
Sure. So you can dispute on all of them more than once. It's just some of the platforms only give you the opportunity to flag a review to get it reviewed. So if you've already flagged a review from your account, instead of flagging it again, what you'll want to do is you'll want to go to the footer of that site and find an email for support, and then email your issue. That way you're actually working with a person and not just dealing with their automated flagging process. And you can do that on all of the sites.
Okay. The next question we have is, why don't you admit it? If you're at fault, why don't you just admit it?
Okay, so that's in regards to owners' responses. Eddie, that's a good question. So we're not saying don't admit fault if your team or if you were at fault. Sorry, that read wrong. What we mean is don't dwell on the details. Instead, own up, apologize, address that you've met with your team to address your situation, that you're using it as a tool to improve and better train. But just, you don't need to get into detail about why you were at fault and how you or your team dropped the ball. Instead, just show that you have good customer service, you're trying to rectify the situation, devalue the review by showing the public that you're trying to make things right. Don't dwell on the actual experience itself in the owner's response.
Okay. The next question is, hiring is a challenge opportunity in all industries. What other sites have become high traffic platforms for those looking for new jobs that could and should be monitored?
So Glassdoor and Indeed, of course. SiteJabber is another one. Those are the 3 that I'm hearing the most. But let's open it up to the floor. What are you all using, or what's been brought up in your industries?
And while those are being typed in with Glassdoor and Indeed, it's not just necessarily being on the defense of trying to just remove and respond to the negative reviews that are on Glassdoor and Indeed. We do provide solutions for franchisors or Zs that can deploy a review tool to help generate more positive reviews in those review sites to your happy employees. So don't always just play defense. I'm sure you have a lot of happy employees that currently work with you and your team. So therefore, you can definitely deploy either a text or an email to link out to those Glassdoor and Indeed review sites to help engage your employees and propel your reviews and your stars at a higher level by doing that. So it's not just the defense side of things.
And that's a good tip, Mark, because most of the time you'll be able to feel a negative review on Glassdoor or Indeed coming based off of how someone is terminated. A lot of times they'll go straight to Glassdoor and Indeed, and we're successful in helping brands remove the content from those disgruntled, angry, upset, terminated employees, because they tend to rant about management and kind of make personal attacks rather than an overall experience being employed with that brand. But you never know when you're going to get that, loose cannon. So that's why it's always smart to just continually be building up with your happy and long-term employees.
Yeah, and just to clarify, because some people take us removing legitimate firsthand experiences off. We can't remove negative reviews that do not violate those terms and conditions. We're just holding each and every one of those review sites to those terms and conditions. And so we pick out the idiosyncrasies of why it violated. But a lot of people, there are a lot of reviews out there that belong there. And that's where we come in and coach and educate and respond to those reviews, both at the macro and the micro with the franchisees of trying to rectify the situation, and with those owners' responses as well. So Sally, are there any more questions? So from there, I want to thank everybody for attending. I hope this is valuable information. And I know that IFA will be sending this out via PDF. So you'll have these slides to share to you and your team. And once again, thank you for your time. And I'm going to turn it back over to Caitlin.
Thanks so much, Mark. And Brandon, Sally, thank you so much for your time today, and to the whole Consumer Fusion team for their constant support of IFA. Yes, these slides along with the recording will be on the community site available for you there. And of course, the contact information here. If you guys have any questions, reach out directly to Mark. Thank you all again for attending today. Mark, Brandon, Sally, thank you again for your time. And we'll see you guys later. Have a great rest of your afternoon.
Thanks, everyone. Bye, Caitlin.
Bye.